The sound of the gavel didn't stop Officer Serena Hale. It didn't stop the sneer curling her lip, and it certainly didn't stop her hand from reaching for her taser inside a packed municipal courtroom. She saw only what she wanted to see: a woman she considered beneath her, a defendant who refused to tremble. Serena thought she was disciplining a defiant nobody. She didn't know that the woman standing calmly in the defense box, hands loose at her sides, was Lieutenant Commander Aria Voss, a decorated Navy SEAL who had disarmed insurgents in total darkness while Serena was likely asleep in her patrol car. By the time Serena realized her mistake, the courtroom cameras had captured every frame of her career ending, and the nobody had already won. The morning sun in Virginia Beach usually promised a humid, heavy day, but inside the pristine, air-conditioned interior of a Range Rover, the world was cool and quiet. Aria Voss adjusted the rearview mirror, checking her appearance. The navy dress whites were sharp, the ribbons aligned with mathematical precision, the gold warfare insignia gleaming against the fabric. However, she wasn't wearing the jacket yet. It hung carefully on a hanger in the back seat. In a simple white t-shirt and dark trousers, she looked like any other athletic woman heading to the gym or running errands. She was due at the base for a commendation ceremony. Not for herself, but for one of the junior operators she had trained. It was a good day, where it was supposed to be. As she turned onto exasperatingly slow Atlantic Avenue, the blue and red lights flashed in her mirror. Aria sighed, checking her speedometer. She was doing 25 in a 25 zone. Her hands moved to the 10 and 2 position on the steering wheel, fingers open and visible. She knew the drill. She rolled down all the window. The police cruiser pulled up aggressively close to her bumper before stopping. Officer Serena Hale stepped out. She adjusted her belt, pulling her pants up over her hips, and walked with a swagger that suggested she owned the pavement beneath her boots. She didn't approach the window immediately. She tapped the tail light, walked a slow circle around the SUV, and peered suspiciously into the back seat where the uniform jacket hung. Finally, she leaned into the driver's side window. She didn't say hello. "License and registration," Serena said, snapping her gum. Her name tag was slightly crooked, and her eyes were hidden behind mirrored aviators, even though the sun wasn't fully up. "Good morning, officer," Aria said, her voice an even well-modulated contralto. "May I ask the reason for the stop, license, and registration?" Serena repeated, spacing the words out as if speaking to a child or someone who didn't understand English. She leaned closer, her nose twitching as if she smelled something foul. "Do you have a hearing problem?" "No, officer. I'm reaching for my glove box now." Aria moved slowly. Serena's hand dropped instantly to the holster at her hip. "Watch it. Slow movements." Aria didn't flinch. She retrieved the documents and handed them over. Serena snatched them, glancing at the name Aria Voss and the address in a high-end neighborhood. She let out a scoff that was loud enough to be heard over the passing traffic. "Voss?" Serena muttered. "Right. And whose car is this, Miss Voss?" "It is mine," Aria replied. "Yours?" Serena laughed, a dry, humorless bark. "This is a $100,000 vehicle. You expect me to believe a woman like you?" She gestured vaguely at Aria's complexion and casual t-shirt. "Owns this legally. What do you do? Dealing?" Aria's eyes narrowed slightly, the only sign of her rising irritation. "I work for the government." "Yeah, I bet. Welfare office," Serena smirked. "Department of Defense," Aria corrected, her voice dropping a few degrees in temperature. Serena rolled her eyes. "Get out of the car!" "Am I under arrest?" "I said, get out of the car. I smell marijuana." It was a lie so blatant it was almost insulting. Aria had never smoked a day in her life. Her body was a temple built for endurance and warfare. But she knew the game. If she resisted now on the side of the road with no witnesses, things would escalate into violence that she would be blamed for. Aria stepped out. She stood 5'10", lean muscle coiled under her skin, her posture perfect. She towered over the stocky officer. Serena seemed to take offense at the height difference. She shoved Aria toward the hood of the car, hands on the hood. Spread them. As Aria complied, Serena kicked her ankles apart roughly, far wider than necessary. She patted Aria down, her hands lingering aggressively, checking pockets, patting down her waist. She found nothing but a wallet and a phone. "Where's the stash?" Serena hissed in her ear. "There is no stash. You are making a mistake, officer." "The only mistake is you thinking you can drive through my district in a stolen car," Serena spat. She grabbed Aria's wrist, twisting it behind her back to cuff her. "I advise you to check the registration properly," Aria said calmly, though the pain in her shoulder was sharp. "And check my ID again." "Shut up." Serena slammed the cuffs shut. "You're going downtown, resisting arrest, suspicion of grand theft auto, and let's add disorderly conduct for the attitude." As Serena shoved Aria into the back of the humid cruiser, Aria caught a glimpse of the uniform jacket hanging in her own back seat. Serena hadn't even looked at it. She was too blinded by her own prejudice to see the commander's stripes on the sleeve. Aria sat in the cramped back seat, the hard plastic digging into her spine. She took a deep breath, slowing her heart rate, a technique she used before halo jumps. She didn't scream. She didn't beg. She simply memorized Officer Serena Hale's badge number, 5942. The war had just begun, but Serena didn't know she was fighting it yet. The courtroom smelled of floor wax and stale coffee. It was a drab room in the municipal courthouse filled with people hoping to contest speeding tickets or plead down minor misdemeanors. Aria sat at the defendant's table. She had chosen not to wear her uniform today. She wore a sharp charcoal gray business suit, her hair pulled back in a tight professional bun. Next to her sat Vaughn Merritt, a civil rights attorney known for his shark-like grin and his hatred for bad cops. Officer Serena Hale sat on the prosecution side, looking bored. She was checking her phone under the table. When she looked up and saw Aria, she smirked, whispering something to the prosecutor, a young, overworked man named Mr. Novak, who looked like he hadn't slept. "Rise," the bailiff droned. Judge Harlan Lang entered. He was an older man with a face like a crumpled paper bag and a reputation for siding with law enforcement regardless of the evidence. He sat down heavily, shuffling papers. "Docket number 44B, Judge Lang grumbled. "Commonwealth versus Aria Voss. Resisting arrest, disorderly conduct, failure to obey a lawful order. How do we plead?" "Not guilty, Your Honor," Vaughn Merritt said, standing up and buttoning his jacket. "Let's get on with it." Lang waved a hand. "Officer Hale, take the stand." Serena marched up to the witness stand, chest puffed out. She swore to tell the truth, a formality she clearly viewed as optional. "Officer Hale," the prosecutor began, "can you describe the events?" "Yes," Serena said, her voice projecting confidence. "I observed the defendant's vehicle swerving erratically on Atlantic Avenue. I initiated a traffic stop for safety reasons. Upon approaching the vehicle, the defendant became belligerent. She refused to hand over identification and began shouting profanities. When I asked her to step out of the vehicle, she took a swing at me." A ripple of murmurs went through the courtroom. Aria sat perfectly still, her face a mask of stone. She wrote a single note on her legal pad. "Lies." "She swung at you?" the prosecutor asked, feigning shock. "Yes. I had to use necessary force to restrain her for her safety and mine. She was screaming that she knew people, that she was going to have my badge, typical entitlement." And did you find any contraband? I smelled marijuana strongly, Serena said, looking directly at the judge. But by the time we got the dogs there, nothing was found. I believe she may have tossed it out the window before pulling over. Thank you, officer. Vaughn Merritt stood up. He didn't walk to the podium. He walked to the center of the floor, creating a clear line of sight between him, Serena, and Aria. Officer Hale, Vaughn started, his voice deceptively light. You stated my client swerved, yet her dash cam footage, which we have submitted into evidence, shows her staying perfectly within her lane. Are you aware the car records telemetry data? Serena stiffened. I know what I saw. Machine's glitch, right? Machine's glitch. Vaughn nodded. You also stated she swung at you, but your body camera was conveniently turned off during the first minutes of the encounter. Why is that? Technical malfunction, Serena recited the standard excuse instantly. It happens. Awfully convenient, Vaughn murmured. You claimed she was belligerent. Tell me, officer, did you run her license plate before you approached the window? I don't recall. Usually I do. If you had, Vaughn's voice sharpened, you would have seen that the vehicle is registered to an Aria Voss with a high-level security clearance. You might have also noticed that she has 0 points on her license, 0 prior arrests, a perfect record. Criminals have to start somewhere. Serena shot back with a sneer. Just because she hasn't been caught before doesn't mean she isn't a thug. The word hung in the air. Thug. Judge Lang looked up, frowning, but not at Serena. He looked at Vaughn. Counselor, watch your tone with the officer. I am merely establishing credibility, Your Honor, Vaughn said. He turned back to Serena. Officer, did you strike Miss Voss? I used standard takedown maneuvers. Miss Voss suffered a dislocated shoulder, Vaughn said, holding up a medical report. Is dislocating a shoulder standard maneuver for a compliant woman in a traffic stop? She wasn't compliant, Serena snapped, her face reddening. She's a big girl. She looked like she could handle herself. I wasn't going to take chances with someone like that, Vaughn said. No further questions. As Serena stepped down, she passed the defense table. She leaned in slightly, whispering so only Aria could hear. You think a fancy lawyer helps? You're going down, sweetie. I run this town. Aria remained silent. The defense calls Aria Voss to the stand, Vaughn announced. Aria stood. The movement was fluid, powerful. As she walked to the stand, the air in the room seemed to shift. She didn't walk like a defendant. She walked like a commanding officer inspecting the troops. She sat down and adjusted the microphone. Miss Voss, Vaughn said, state your occupation for the record. I serve in the United States Navy, Aria said clearly. Serena let out a loud snort from the prosecution table. Probably a cook, she muttered audibly. Judge Lang banged his gavel. Quiet. Specifically, what is your rank and designation? Vaughn asked. Aria looked at Serena. I am a Lieutenant Commander. I am currently the team leader for SEAL Team 4's Bravo platoon. The silence that followed was absolute. Serena's face went slack. Her mouth opened slightly. The prosecutor dropped his pen. Even Judge Lang blinked, leaning forward over his glasses. SEAL Team? Lang repeated. You? Yes, Your Honor, Aria said. Stolen valor! Serena shouted suddenly, jumping to her feet. She's lying. Look at her. She's not a SEAL. Women don't make it that high up. She's a liar. Sit down, officer, Lang barked. I demand proof. Serena was losing it. The narrative she had built of the uneducated street-level criminal was crumbling. She's mocking this court. She's probably a janitor on a ship if she's in the Navy at all. Your Honor, Aria said, her voice cutting through Serena's shouting like a knife. I have my military ID in my possession. I also have the footage from my vehicle's internal cabin camera, which my lawyer is about to play. It shows I never raised a hand. It shows Officer Hale calling me a racial slur before turning off her body cam. What? Serena froze. Internal camera. Vaughn Merritt smiled, holding up a flash drive. The Range Rover record's inside the cabin too, officer. We didn't mention it earlier because we wanted to see how many times you would perjure yourself under oath. The count is currently at 12. Serena's face turned a violent shade of purple. Panic and rage mixed in her eyes. She felt the walls closing in. She had to regain control. She was the law. This woman was just a suspect. You illegally recorded me, Serena screamed, stepping out from behind the prosecution table. She moved toward the witness stand, her hand instinctively going to her baton. You think you can trap me? I'm the victim here. Officer Hale, stand down, Judge Lang roared. But Serena was too far gone. The humiliation, the exposure, the crumbling of her ego. It was too much. She lunged toward the witness box, reaching over the wooden railing to grab Aria by the lapels of her suit. I'll teach you to lie about me, you little. It was the last mistake Serena Hale would make as a police officer. The courtroom, usually a place of bored murmurs and shuffling papers, erupted into chaos the moment Officer Serena Hale crossed the invisible line between law enforcement and lawlessness. When Serena lunged over the railing of the witness box, her face was a mask of contorted rage. She wasn't acting as a police officer anymore. She was a bully whose worldview had been shattered, lashing out at the object of her humiliation. Her fingers hooked into the lapels of Aria Voss's expensive charcoal suit. Her intention clear: to drag the woman down, to assert dominance, to beat the truth out of existence. You think you're better than me? Serena screamed, spit flying. For 99% of the population, a sudden assault by an armed, furious police officer would induce panic. Adrenaline would spike. Fine motor skills would degrade, and the result would be a flailing, desperate attempt to defend oneself. But Aria Voss was not 99% of the population. For Aria, time didn't speed up. It slowed down. This was a neurological adaptation forged in the freezing surf of Coronado and the dust-choked streets of active war zones. Her heart rate dropped. Her vision tunneled on the threat. She didn't see a police officer. She saw a hostile combatant compromising her position. Serena tried to yank Aria forward to deliver a strike with her free hand. Aria didn't resist the pull. Instead, she stepped into it, moving with a fluidity that made her blur against the drab courtroom background. Aria utilized the momentum. As Serena pulled, Aria stepped inside the officer's guard. Her left hand shot up, not to strike, but to trap. She caught Serena's wrist, the one gripping her lapel, and clamped down with a grip like a hydraulic press. Serena's eyes widened. She tried to pull back, but she was anchored. "Let go!" Serena shrieked, raising her right hand to punch. Aria didn't even blink. She rotated her hips, driving her shoulder into Serena's sternum, while simultaneously twisting the trapped wrist outward in a textbook joint lock. There was a sickening pop. Not a break, but the sound of tendons being stretched to their absolute limit. Serena howled, her knees buckling instantly under the pressure. The punch she had thrown turned into a flailing grab for balance that wasn't there. Aria maintained control of the wrist, guiding Serena's descent. She wasn't brawling. She was conducting a takedown. With a precise, agonizing twist, she forced Serena face first onto the wooden floor of the witness box. Thud. The sound of the officer hitting the floor echoed like a gunshot. "Stay down," Aria commanded. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried a terrifying authority that silenced the room. Serena, fueled by adrenaline and humiliation, tried to scramble up, reaching for the baton on her belt. "I'll kill you!" Assault on an officer. Aria sighed, almost disappointed. She stepped on the back of Serena's knee, pinning her leg, and drove her other knee into Serena's lower back, gently enough to avoid permanent damage, but hard enough to knock the wind out of her. She grabbed Serena's reaching hand, pulled it behind the officer's back, and applied upward pressure. "Stop resisting," Aria said, throwing Serena's own favorite phrase back at her. The three bailiffs in the room finally snapped out of their shock. They rushed forward, hands on their holsters, shouting confusing orders. "Drop it! Let her go! Hands up!" Aria didn't panic. She looked up at the lead bailiff, a heavy-set man named Deputy Declan. She held Serena pinned with one hand, her other hand raised calmly in the air, open palm facing them. "Deputy," Aria said, her voice steady. "I have secured the aggressor. I am unarmed. I am relinquishing control to you now." She slowly released Serena's arm and stepped back, smoothing the front of her jacket. Serena scrambled up, red-faced, hair wild, panting like a rabid dog. She ripped her baton out of its holder. "She assaulted me. Shoot her now." Deputy Declan looked at Serena, then at the calm, composed Navy SEAL standing with her hands clasped respectfully in front of her. Then he looked at the stunned Judge Lang. "Serena, put the stick down," Declan barked, stepping between them. "She attacked me," Serena screamed, pointing the baton at Aria. "We all saw it, Serena." Judge Lang roared from the bench, his face pale. "You attacked the witness, Deputy. Disarms Officer Hale immediately." "What?" Serena spun around, looking at the judge as if he had grown a second head. "Judge? I said disarm her." Lang slammed his gavel down so hard the handle cracked. "You have disgraced this courtroom enough for one day." Two bailiffs grabbed Serena's arms. She fought them, kicking and screaming, completely losing her composure. "Get off me, I'm a cop. You can't touch me, I'm the victim." As they dragged her towards the side exit, Serena twisted her head back to look at Aria. Aria was standing motionless, watching the spectacle with eyes that held zero fear, zero anger, and zero pity. She looked at Serena the way a scientist looks at a specimen in a jar. That look hurt Serena more than the wrist lock ever could. "I'll get you, Voss." Serena's voice trailed off as the heavy oak doors slammed shut behind her, muting her screams. The courtroom was deadly silent. The court reporter was typing furiously, trying to capture every second. Mr. Novak, the prosecutor, had his head in his hands. Aria Voss turned to the judge. "My apologies for the disruption, Your Honor. May I continue my testimony?" Judge Lang stared at her. He took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. He had been ready to throw the book at this woman. Now he felt like he was the one on trial. "Miss Voss," Lang said, his voice trembling slightly. I believe we have seen enough. The charges against you are dismissed with prejudice. You are free to go." Aria nodded once. "Thank you, Your Honor." She turned to her lawyer, Vaughn Merritt. Vaughn was grinning so hard it looked painful. "That," Vaughn whispered as they gathered their files, "was the single greatest thing I've ever seen in years of law." "It's not over," Aria said quietly, picking up her briefcase. "She's not done, and neither am I." Officer Serena Hale sat in the locker room of the precinct, an ice pack pressed to her wrist. She was shaking. Not from fear, she told herself, but from rage. The chief had sent her home for the day, telling her to cool off while he smoothed things over with the judge. Smoothing things over. That was how it worked. The system protected its own. Serena knew that. She had roughed up people before. She had lied on reports before. It always went away. "Stupid judge," she muttered to the empty room. "Stupid." She pulled out her phone, expecting to see text messages of support from her fellow officers. Instead, she saw a notification from a friend. Simply a link with the text. "Have you seen this? You need to delete your socials now." Serena frowned. She tapped the link. It opened a video on a popular streaming platform. The title read, "Racist Cop Attacks Navy SEAL Commander in Court. Instant Karma." Serena's stomach dropped. The video was clear, high definition. It wasn't from the court cameras. It was from a cell phone in the gallery. Someone had been recording. The video started with Aria Voss stating her rank. "Lieutenant Commander, Team Leader for SEAL Team 4. It showed Serena's face, the shock, the sneer, the accusation of stolen valor. It showed the lawyer revealing the cabin footage proving Serena lied. And then it showed the lunge. The angle was perfect. It showed Serena looking like a deranged animal climbing over the railing. It showed Aria's lightning-fast counter move. It showed Serena face-planting. And worst of all, it captured the audio perfectly. "Shoot her. Shoot her now." Serena's voice screeched in the video. The video had been posted. It had millions of views. Serena's hands started to tremble uncontrollably. She scrolled down to the comments. User 99. "Did you just try to fight a SEAL? That's like a toddler fighting a tank." LMAO. Veteran Dad. "I served. That officer is a disgrace to the uniform. Commander Voss showed incredible restraint. She could have broken that cop's arm in 3 places. Justice now." Listen to the cop scream, "Shoot her." Just because she lost a fight she started. She wanted to execute a woman in a courtroom. She needs prison. Newshound. "I looked up Officer Serena Hale, badge 5942. Turns out she has excessive force complaints. Why does she still have a badge?" Serena threw the phone against the locker. It cracked, but the screen stayed on, the video looping her humiliation over and over. The door to the locker room banged open. It was Sergeant Declan Novak, the union rep. Usually Novak was the guy who made problems disappear. He looked pale. "Serena," he said, not making eye contact. "Chief wants to see you now." "Tell him I'm going home," Serena snapped. I'm injured." "You're not going home, Serena. The mayor is on the phone. The news trucks are parked outside. CNN is live from the courthouse steps." Novak wiped sweat from his forehead. "They're talking about a federal inquiry." "Federal?" Serena laughed nervously. "For a traffic stop for attacking a high-ranking military officer on camera, Serena, do you know who Aria Voss is? Her father is Senator Marcus Voss. Her commanding officer just called the police commissioner and threatened to bring a JAG Corps battalion down on this department." Serena felt the blood drain from her face. She didn't know about the senator. She didn't check. She just saw a black woman in a nice car and assumed, I can fix this." Serena stammered. "I'll say I was under stress. PTSD. We can spin it." "There is no spinning this," Novak said, his voice cold. "You need to surrender your badge and gun. You're on administrative leave. Unpaid." "Unpaid? You can't do that. The union." "The union isn't touching this." Novak cut her off. "We defend cops," wrote Serena, "not whatever that was. Give me the badge." Serena slowly unpinned the metal shield from her shirt. It felt heavy. She handed it over along with her service weapon. She felt naked without them. "Get out the back way," Novak said. "If the press sees you, they'll tear you apart." Serena walked out the back exit of the precinct into the alleyway. She pulled her hoodie up, trying to hide, but as she reached her personal car, her phone, cracked screen and all, buzzed again. It was a text from an unknown number. "You made the wrong enemy. See you soon." She looked around the alley, paranoia gripping her throat. The shadows seemed longer, every sound like footsteps. Meanwhile, across town, Aria Voss sat in a quiet, dimly lit office. Across the desk sat General Tariq Lang, a man with 4 stars on his shoulder and a face carved from granite. "I saw the footage, Commander," Lang said, his voice gravelly. "You handled yourself with discipline." "Thank you, sir. However," Lang leaned forward, "the Navy doesn't like its officers being treated like criminals, and I personally don't like my best operators being targeted by corrupt local law enforcement." "I have already dismissed the charges, sir," Aria said. "This isn't about the charges anymore, Aria. This woman, Hale, she represents a rot. We dug into her history. We found patterns, targeting military personnel, targeting minorities, fabricating evidence. The Department of Justice is interested, but they move slow." Lang slid a file folder across the desk. It was marked confidential. "We want you to stay on this, Aria, not as a SEAL, but as a private citizen. We can't deploy you domestically, obviously, but if you were to investigate further, if you were to expose the network protecting her, the Navy would not object." Aria opened the file. It contained photos of Serena Hale meeting with local gang leaders, photos of cash exchanges, photos of Hale planting drugs in other cars. This wasn't just a bad apple. It was a poisoned orchard. Aria looked up, a cold smile touching her lips. "I have some leave time saved up, General." "Take it," Lang nodded. "And Aria, happy hunting?" As Aria walked out of the base, she checked her phone. The video had hit millions of views. The Justice for Commander Voss was trending globally. She got into a Range Rover. She didn't turn on the radio. She just drove, heading not home, but to the address listed in the file Lang had given her. It was a dive bar called the Blue Line, a known hangout for off-duty cops like Hale. Hale thought the fight was over because she had lost her badge. She was wrong. Aria Voss wasn't looking for an apology. She was looking for total dismantling. Hale was about to learn that a badge protects you from the law, but nothing protects you from the truth. Aria Voss stood in the shadows of the alley behind the Blue Line, a dive bar known as a sanctuary for the city's corrupt elements. She wasn't wearing her uniform or a business suit. She wore black cargo pants, a tactical hoodie, and a ball cap pulled low. She looked invisible, blending perfectly into the grime of the city night. Inside the bar, Serena Hale was drowning her sorrows. Stripped of her badge and gun, she was drinking cheap whiskey and loudly complaining to a group of sympathetic officers. The old guard, men who believed the badge granted them immunity from morality. "It's a setup," Serena slurred, slamming her glass down so hard liquid splashed onto the sticky bar top. "She baited me. She knew exactly what she was doing. And now the chief hangs me out to dry after everything I've done for this department." "Don't worry, Serena," said Sergeant Declan Novak, a greasy man with a history of losing evidence whenever the price was right. "This internet thing will blow over. People have short memories. Give it a month. We'll get you a job in private security. Or maybe other things." "Other things?" Serena squinted, her eyes glassy. Novak leaned in, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "The shipment is coming in. The docks. Since you're off the roster, you're the perfect person to drive the scout car. No GPS on your personal vehicle. Easy money. 10 grand for one night." Serena's eyes widened. 10 grand was months of her previous salary, and right now she was broke, facing legal fees and desperate. What's the cargo? Better you don't know. Novak winked, a gesture that made his scar-tissued face look sinister. Just know it belongs to the Viper cartel, and they pay well for safe passage. Serena hesitated. She was a bully, yes, a racist, absolutely, but a drug runner. That was a line she hadn't crossed explicitly until now. Desperation, however, was a powerful motivator, and her resentment towards the system that betrayed her fueled her decision. "I'm in," she whispered. Outside, Aria Voss tapped her earpiece. "Did you get that?" Loud and clear. Von Merritt's voice crackled in her ear. He wasn't just a lawyer. Before passing the bar, he had been an intelligence officer. He knew how to run surveillance. "The docks. We need to know exactly which pier." "I'm on it," Aria whispered. She didn't need to break in. She had already cloned Serena's phone data while passing near her in the courtroom. A piece of tech borrowed from her Spec Ops contacts. As Serena stumbled out of the bar, checking her texts for the location, Aria received the coordinates in real time. Pier 42. Midnight. Night arrived with a storm. Rain lashed the Virginia Beach docks, turning the shipping containers into slick, towering monoliths. The wind howled off the Atlantic, masking sound. Aria lay prone on top of a decommissioned crane, wrapped in a ghillie suit adapted for urban environments, looking through a long-range thermal lens. Below, 3 black SUVs pulled up to a secluded section of the yard. Serena's beat-up sedan was parked at the entrance, acting as the lookout. Men got out of the SUVs. They weren't cops. They were cartel enforcers, heavily armed, moving with practiced discipline. They opened the back of a shipping container. Inside weren't drugs. It was worse. Aria zoomed in. The camera captured crates marked with stolen military insignia. Stolen weapons, high-grade explosives, assault rifles, night vision optics. "Vaughn," Aria whispered, her blood running cold. "They aren't moving drugs. They're selling stolen police armory weapons to the cartel. This is federal treason." "I'm seeing the feed." Vaughn's voice was tense. "Aria, do not engage. The FBI is out. We have enough to bury them." "It's too long," Aria murmured, watching the speed of the transfer. "They're loading up now. If those weapons hit the street, people die." Suddenly, Serena's car flashed its lights. The lookout signal. "Cops!" Serena screamed into her radio, which Aria was monitoring. "Patrol car coming down the access road." It was just a routine private security guard driving a white sedan, completely clueless to what was happening. But the cartel didn't know that. One of the gunmen raised an assault rifle, aiming at the approaching security vehicle. Aria couldn't wait for the FBI. She couldn't watch an innocent guard get slaughtered. "Engaging," she said. She didn't shoot to kill. She was operating as a civilian. She shot to create chaos. Crack. The bullet from her rifle struck the pavement inches from the gunman's feet, sending up a spray of concrete. He flinched, firing wildly into the air. "Sniper!" the gunman screamed. Chaos erupted. The cartel members scrambled for cover behind the SUVs, assuming they were surrounded by a tactical team. "It's a trap!" one shouted. Serena, panicked by the gunfire, threw her car into reverse, trying to flee the scene. But in her haste and terror, she backed straight into a pile of crates, shattering her taillight and getting her wheels stuck in the thick mud. Aria slid down the crane cable, moving like a shadow. She dropped into the maze of containers, flanking the cartel members. She pulled the pin on a flashbang, homemade, non-lethal, but deafening. Bang. White light blinded the gunmen. They fired blindly into the dark, their discipline shattering. By the time the FBI tactical team breached the gate, Sirens wailing and lights blazing. They found a scene that looked like an action movie set. The cartel members were disoriented and zip-tied to a chain-link fence. The stolen weapons were secured, and Serena Hale, she was locked inside her own car. The doors were jammed shut from the outside with a steel pipe wedged into the handles. On the windshield, written in the mud with a gloved finger, was a message: "Courtesy of SEAL Team 4. Aria watched from a rooftop a block away as the feds dragged a screaming, sobbing Serena Hale out of the car. This time, there was no union rep to save her. There was no brotherhood. There was only the cold, hard reality of federal handcuffs. The fallout was nuclear. The arrest of Serena Hale wasn't just a local news story. It was national headlines. Disgraced officer linked to arms trafficking ring. Aria Voss's viral video had been the spark, but the raid at the docks was the explosion. The FBI seized Serena's phone. And because she was terrified of federal prison, she sang. She sang like a canary. She named names. She gave up Sergeant Declan Novak. She gave up the precinct captain who looked the other way. She gave up the cartel contacts. She detailed every bribe, every falsified report, every planted bag of drugs. The blue wall of silence that had protected the corrupt officers of the 4th Precinct had crumbled into dust. Aria sat in her living room, sipping tea and watching the news. In a stunning development, officers from the 4th Precinct have been indicted on federal charges ranging from racketeering to arms trafficking. The investigation, sparked by a viral courtroom incident involving Lieutenant Commander Aria Voss, has exposed one of the largest corruption scandals in state history. The screen cut to footage of Serena Hale being led out of the federal courthouse. This time, she wasn't wearing a uniform or a smug expression. She was in an orange jumpsuit, shackled at the wrists and ankles. She looked aged, hollow. Her arrogance was gone, replaced by the terrified realization that she had destroyed her own life. But the karma wasn't done yet. Aria's phone rang. It was Vaughn Merritt. "You watching this?" "I am." "There's more." The civil suit. "Go on." "Because Hale was acting under the color of law when she assaulted you and falsified the arrest report, the city is liable. But here's the kicker. The judge for the civil case, it's Judge Lang." Aria raised an eyebrow. "Lang? He hates me." "He hated you," Vaughn corrected. "Now he's terrified of you. He wants to prove he's not part of the corruption. He just fast-tracked the settlement to avoid a public trial that would drag his court through the mud." "How much?" $5 million and a formal public apology from the mayor. Aria looked out the window at the ocean, watching the waves crash against the shore. "I don't want the money." "I knew you'd say that." Vaughn laughed. "So I drafted the paperwork. The money goes to a new legal defense fund for victims of police misconduct. We're calling it the Hale Fund, just to twist the knife a little." Aria smiled. "Perfect. However, there was one loose end. Serena Hale's sentencing hearing." Aria was subpoenaed to testify again, not as a defendant this time, but as the victim impact witness. The day of the sentencing, the courtroom was packed. Every major news outlet was there. When Aria walked in, wearing her full dress whites, the ribbons on her chest telling stories of valor and sacrifice, the room went silent out of respect. Serena sat at the defense table. She looked at Aria, and for the first time, there was no hate in her eyes, only regret. She knew deeply and painfully that she had picked a fight with a titan, and the titan had crushed her without even raising her voice. Aria took the stand. She looked out at the gallery, then turned to Serena. "Commander Voss," the judge asked, "do you have a statement?" "I took an oath to defend this country against all enemies, foreign and domestic," Aria said, her voice filling the room. "Officer Hale, You forgot who you work for. You thought the badge made you a master, but the badge is a servant's tool. You didn't just break the law, you broke the trust of every person who looks at a uniform and hopes for help. That is your crime, and that is why you must answer for it. Serena put her head on the table and wept. The judge adjusted his glasses. Serena Hale, for the crimes of racketeering, arms trafficking, and civil rights violations, I sentence you to 25 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. The gavel banged. It sounded like a coffin closing. As the bailiffs led Serena away, she didn't scream. She didn't fight. She looked small, defeated by her own choices. Aria walked out of the courthouse steps into a sea of microphones. Flashbulbs popped like strobes. Commander Voss, Commander Voss, how does it feel to take down a corrupt empire? A reporter shouted. Aria stopped. She looked at the cameras, her expression serious. It wasn't about taking down an empire, she said. It was about the right to drive home safely. That's a right everyone should have, and I'll keep fighting until they do. She walked toward her Range Rover. Vaughn was waiting, holding the door open. So, Vaughn said, what now? You're a national hero. The Navy offered you a promotion. Hollywood wants movie rights. Aria got into the car. She looked at the horizon. Now, she said, I have a junior operator's commendation ceremony to attend. I'm late. She started the engine and drove away, leaving the chaos behind her. She had won the war, but for Aria Voss, the mission never really ended. Years is a long time. In the outside world, governments change, technology advances, and children grow into adults. But inside the Federal Correctional Institution in Aliceville, Alabama, time does not move forward. It loops. It is a suffocating cycle of bells, counts, and the heavy metallic clank of locking doors. For inmate 8932B, formerly known as Officer Serena Hale, the world had shrunk to the size of a 6 by 8 foot concrete box. The Alabama heat was relentless, a wet, heavy blanket that made the air inside the prison taste like stale sweat and industrial cleaner. Serena knelt on the linoleum floor of the visitation center, her knees aching against the hard tile. She wasn't wearing the crisp, authoritative blue uniform that had once been her armor against the world. She wore a shapeless, faded khaki jumpsuit that hung loosely on her frame. Her hair, once dyed a defiant blonde, was now a brittle, streaky gray, pulled back severely to keep it out of the bucket of soapy water beside her. You missed a spot, 89302. A voice boomed from above. Serena flinched. It was a reflex she hadn't been able to shake. She looked up to see Officer Riley, a guard who couldn't be older. He stood with his thumbs hooked in his belt, looking down at her with a mixture of boredom and disdain. Sorry, sir, Serena mumbled, dipping her scrub brush into the gray water. Don't apologize, just clean it, Riley scoffed, turning his back on her. And use the toothbrush for the grout. I want to see my reflection in that corner. Serena gritted her teeth, the humiliation burning in her throat like acid. She would have eaten a kid like Riley for breakfast. She would have intimidated him into silence with a single glare. Now she was nothing. In the hierarchy of prison, dirty cops were the lowest of the low, hated by the convicts for the badge they once wore, and despised by the guards for disgracing it. She bent over the grout, scrubbing rhythmically with the tiny toothbrush. Left, right, left, right. It was the only control she had left. Above her, mounted high on the wall inside a protective plexiglass cage, a television droned on. It was usually set to a soap opera or a game show. Background noise to drown out the misery. But today, The midday news was on. Serena wasn't paying attention until a familiar name cut through the haze of her mind. Reporting live from Washington, D.C., where Lieutenant Commander Aria Voss has just exited the Senate floor. Serena's hand stopped moving. The toothbrush slipped from her fingers. She looked up. There on the screen was the woman who had ended her life. Aria Voss looked different than she did in that Virginia Beach courtroom. She looked older, yes, but also more formidable. She stood at a podium adorned with the seal of the United States Congress, wearing a perfectly tailored royal blue suit. She didn't look like a victim. She looked like a titan. The banner at the bottom of the screen was bright red. The Hale Act passes Senate unanimously. Serena felt the blood drain from her face. She scrambled to her feet, ignoring the pain in her knees, and took a step towards the screen, as if getting closer would change what she was reading. The legislation, informally known as the Hale Act, establishes strict federal oversight for police misconduct and mandates independent review boards for all arrests involving military personnel. The news anchor narrated. The camera zoomed in on Aria Voss as she leaned into the microphone. Her voice was calm, just as it had been on that day in the courtroom. But now it carried the weight of a history. We do not write these laws to punish the past, Aria said, her eyes piercing through the camera lens, seemingly looking straight into the visitation room in Alabama. We write them to secure the future. The badge is a symbol of public trust. When that trust is weaponized by prejudice, it is not just a crime. It is a betrayal of the nation. Today we ensure that no officer can hide behind the blue wall ever again. Serena stared, her mouth slightly open. A cold realization washed over her, chilling her to the bone despite the heat. They had used her name. History would remember her, not as the tough cop who ran the streets, not as a protector, and not even as a tragic figure. She was the warning. She was the villain. Her name, the name she had been so proud of, was now synonymous with corruption, racism, and failure. Generations of police officers would learn about the Hale Act in the academy. They would study her mistakes. They would be taught not to be her. Hey, I didn't say stop working, Officer Riley shouted, banging his baton against a metal table. Serena jumped, the spell breaking. She looked around. A few other inmates were watching the screen, then looking at her. They were smiling. It was a cruel, knowing smile. They knew who she was. They knew she had just watched her own legacy turn into ash. Serena sank back to her knees. She picked up the toothbrush. Her hands were shaking so hard she could barely hold it. She scrubbed the floor, trying to scrub away the sound of Aria Voss's voice, but it was impossible. The truth was etched in stone, and now it was etched in federal law. The air was crisp and smelled of cherry blossoms. Aria Voss walked down the marble steps of the Capitol building. The flashes of cameras popped like strobes, but she didn't blink. She was used to bright lights now. Beside her walked Vaughn Merritt, her attorney and friend, who looked like he had just won the lottery. Unanimous, Aria, Vaughn whispered, shaking his head in disbelief. Do you know how rare that is? You got both sides of the aisle to agree on something. That's a miracle. It's not a miracle, Vaughn, Aria said softly, putting on her sunglasses. It's undeniable proof. We just forced them to look at it. They reached the bottom of the steps where a black SUV was waiting. But before Aria could enter, a young woman in a crisp gray uniform stepped out from the crowd of onlookers. She hesitated, clutching a notebook to her chest, looking like she might bolt if spoken to. Aria paused, signaling her security detail to stand down. She recognized the look. It was the look of someone seeking a heading. Can I help you? Aria asked, her tone gentle. The young woman straightened her spine, snapping instinctively to a position of attention. Ma'am? Officer Elena Thorne, Arlington Police Department. I didn't mean to intrude. You're not intruding, Officer Thorne. At ease. Elena relaxed slightly, though her eyes remained wide with awe. I wanted to say thank you. I was in high school when the video of your trial went viral. I watched it 1,000 times. I watched how you stood there, how you didn't scream, didn't fight dirty, didn't let her break you. Elena took a breath, her voice trembling with emotion. I grew up in a neighborhood where we were scared of the police. I hated them. I wanted nothing to do with them. But after watching you, I realized that hating the system doesn't change it. Becoming the change does. I graduated from the academy. I want to be the kind of officer you deserved. That day, Aria felt a tightness in her throat. She took off her sunglasses and looked at the young woman. Elena was fresh-faced, hopeful, and untainted. She was the antidote to the poison Serena Hale had spread. Aria extended her hand. Elena took it, her grip firm. It is an honor to meet you, Officer Thorne, Aria said seriously. The world is full of wolves. It needs sheepdogs to watch over the flock. But remember this, the teeth are for the wolves, never the sheep. Do you understand? I do, ma'am, I promise, Elena said, tears welling in her eyes. I won't let you down. I know you won't. Aria watched the young officer disappear into the crowd. A weight she hadn't realized she was still carrying seemed to lift off her shoulders. The court case had been about justice. The money had been about restitution. But this was victory. Ready to go, Commander? Vaughn asked, holding the car door open. Yeah, Aria nodded. I'm ready. She didn't go straight home. Instead, she drove her Range Rover down to Virginia Beach. She turned onto Atlantic Avenue, the sun dipping low over the ocean, painting the sky in hues of violet and gold. The traffic was light. She cruised past the intersection where blue lights had flashed in her rearview mirror. She passed the spot on the shoulder where she had been thrown against the hood, where handcuffs had bitten into her wrists, where she had been humiliated. She slowed down for a second, looking at the spot. It was just a piece of pavement. Cars drove over it. People walked past it. The grass had grown back where she had been kicked down. There were no ghosts here. The fear was gone. The anger had evaporated, replaced by a profound, quiet peace. Aria Voss rolled down the window, letting the salt air fill the car. She accelerated, the engine purring smoothly, driving past the memory and into the horizon. The war was finally over. And for the first time, the silence wasn't heavy. It was golden. That is the story of how one corrupt officer picked a fight with the wrong woman and lost everything. It's a powerful reminder that true strength isn't about being loud, aggressive, or abusing power. True strength is discipline. It is the ability to remain calm when the world tries to break you. Officer Hale thought her badge made her untouchable, but she learned that in the face of truth, corruption has nowhere to hide. Aria Voss didn't just win a court case. She changed the law and inspired a new generation. If you believe in justice and enjoyed this story of the ultimate underdog victory, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to share this video with your friends and subscribe for more stories of karma, justice, and survival. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video. Satch.